Who came first, chicken or the egg? Can you get corpses without killing anyone? Can corpses kill everyone so that you don't have to kill anyone? That's the eternity long question. When it comes to Necromancers and when it comes to Season 1, this question seems to be answered fairly easily with a couple of simple tweaks that I'm gonna tell you in this video. Yes, in this video I'm speaking about one simple thing, and that is corpse support build. Goal of the build is for you to support corpses by laying as much corpses as possible. Does it require any sort of specific legendaries? Nope. Does it require any sort of specific skills allocations for it to work? Nope. All it requires is... Come on, I'm gonna show you. Okay, boys and girls, I'm gonna tell you about this build. So this build requires you to have 2 hearts, one of which is Vicious Heart that can be obtained through leveling process fairly easily, so that you would socket into any sort of jewelry slot, which is either ring or necklace. So you socket the skill and it casts automatically corpse skills. Second heart is for you to have Decrepify. This is a thing that is kind of optional, but it's kind of not. Now, how this build actually works. So, I use only 2 skills, that's full enough. I'm using Corpse Tendrils, which is rank 5, the highest ranking corpse skill, and then I have Corpse Explosion. I'm currently investing in this skill, but I'm not in super need to have it up to max level right away, right at this point. So I have other skills. I don't really have too much of corpse skills, but I'm having other skills in particular, like this Bone Spear and the Bone Storm. So simply just because so I could do something else while I'm waiting for corpses to appear, or if I just decide to kill monsters faster. But it's not required. And Blood Mist is fully just for me so I could get away from those stunned, frozen situations where I can't really move from the battlefield and I'm being pressured by the monsters. But this is absolutely optional. You can use this as a summoning skill, or you can have even 3 summoning skills. It really doesn't matter. This build works always. Now, the way I have found this build to be most efficient and most fun for me personally is to have a Reap skill created from the very beginning. You need to have updated Reap to lay corpses up to 2nd upgrade, so that when you are hitting enemies up close, enemies would lay corpses. Now the thing is, there's other skills that could lay corpses, but since automation of corpse skills and Vicious Hearts only work when you are up close, it really doesn't matter either you are casting distance corpses, you're making distance corpses, or you're up close, as corpses will be used only when you are close to the enemy. So I believe this would be the best fit. Now, moving forward, I have tried all of the situations on all sorts of active core skills that you could use. I found the Bone Spear to be the best, simply because it pierces through the enemies. Yes, you could get more damage using Bloodlands, but when it comes to killing multiple enemies at once, it kind of struggles, and I always return to Bone Spear. I tried the Blood Surge, but it's kind of a risky situation when you need to do a lot of single target damage and there's very little corpses. So in those scenarios, Bone Spear as well as Sever would help. However, I mentioned this build does not require any sort of legendaries, and if you would wish to use Blood Surge or Sever, you would need to use some sort of legendaries to give you additional damage. Now, when it comes to Bone Spear, it is not necessary to do that. For Bone Spear, I'm using simply to make monsters even more vulnerable. This is mostly focused on single target damage. Additionally, I have invested 3 points, of course, so I could have additional corpses laid when I'm casting skills. And as mentioned from the build, I'm using Blood Mist here. This is the very first level investment of Blood Mist. I'm not sure if leveling through up to level 50 I'll have enough of the points so I could invest it, but a very easy investment. I'm just using it so I would be mobile. I like the mobility, and Necromancer is quite limited on this. Now, I could be investing in other things. I have looked it up, I have tried it out. I noticed that my favorite would be just generating corpses when I'm consuming corpses. And this kind of makes my Bone Spear kind of always up and available, so I would cast it. Now, I do have Corpse Explosion invested only 1 point because I believe this is not the most essential skill for this build and damage build up to work, as the essential is Corpse Tendrils that we're gonna get in a short moment. Now, for Corpse Explosion, you don't actually need to have like the maximum invested straight away. I would recommend you focusing on just having single point invested here, and later on investing with the corpse radius increase and making monsters die even faster, as your idea is just to explode corpses, and the corpse explosion doesn't do as much damage as we would be expecting without legendaries. Moving on, after investing like 5 points into Bone Spear, you should get to this point even faster. First, I would suggest you just skipping this part up to level like 30 and you focusing solely on corpse tendrils. Here I would suggest you investing as much points as possible, because it does two things magically for you. One thing is that it pulls enemies close. It has a short cooldown that you can use on your own, because hey, there's a bonus tip that I haven't mentioned, is that Corpse Tendrils and Corpse Explosion, if you have equipped Vicious Heart on your jewelry slot, will use separate cooldowns. So those cooldowns are not affected by your active cooldowns. What do I mean by that? Is if you are killing like 10 or 15 monsters at one place and you have a Corpse Explosion and Corpse Tendrils being casted by Vicious Hearts simultaneously at the same time, you can do the very same thing on your own if you press the buttons. So you can have twice Corpse Tendrils pulling enemies, doing damage on them, and once enemies are pulled, you can just simply cast Bone Spear and it just simply goes through the enemies, and it's super pleasing and super satisfying to look at those things. When it comes to Vicious Tendrils, I do have to say it is kind of essential for you to invest it so that monsters would be slowed, and so that it would be dropping blood orbs. This is the thing where you kind of have to have it because you're always in close range with enemies, and once you have this sort of thing achieved, then I would say you need to invest at least single point into Decrepify, because we have Vicious Heart with Decrepify, and this Decrepify makes enemies even weaker, which is obvious. It kills enemies that are at low health, so that when you are close to the enemies, you see enemies dying very often. A thing that helps you as you are close in combat is you having additional amplified damage added by 12%, so that when you're close to the enemies not only are cursed and weaker, you're dealing additional damage to the enemies. There's of course this thing that you can invest later on, like Death Embrace, so that enemies that are close to you would take additional damage. This is a bonus thing, but this is not actually essential for build to work. This is more of like when you have your max skills allocated, then you can invest in, or if you don't really think that you could invest into anything else, this is the thing that could help you, but this is not as beneficial as anything more that I'm gonna show you here. Now, as I mentioned, I'm using Bone Spear build, and I found Bone Spear to be the most fun for me. You could use any other additional skill, you can use summons, but for me, I found Bone Spear to be working best. And for Bone Spear, so I could increase its damage and critical chances, always I'm using this skill tree that kind of buffs the things. And as Corpse Tendrils and Decrepify makes enemies vulnerable, I'm making increased vulnerable damage to them. Additionally, since enemies are vulnerable and I'm doing constant critical attacks on them, it does happen fairly often. Moving on, I have invested into Blade Bone Storm, so I could increase critical rate, as well as I have increased bone skills damage when above 50% of the essence. In most of the cases above 50% of the essence, because corpses are being consumed constantly, and consumed corpses are giving me essence for free. So that's a cool tweak. I have sacrificed each and every Skeletor and Golem that I have come across. I have tried playing with them, but I didn't really find it to be super efficient or satisfying. For first up, I'm sacrificing the Skeletors, the initial ones, so I could have even more critical chance. Rest of the things, I tell you honestly, defense against non-physical attacks not fully functioning in the game, so don't fall for this trick if you're starting out. Don't invest into this even if you're weak. Shadow damage only if you're playing shadow. Critical chance works for corpse skills as well as bone skills and blood skills. For skeletal mages, I would be investing into even more vulnerable damage, because again, bone spear, corpse tendrils are pulling enemies together. We're making more enemies vulnerable, and this kind of thing is a buff. If I would be playing as a blood mage, blood necromancer, I would be using overpower damage. As a blood, I'm kind of torn between those two, either maximum essence or more vulnerable damage, but at the moment I'm thinking like I'm gonna go for more of a vulnerable damage, because it's kind of a very easy thing to pull off, and maximum essence, I'm not really sure how big of a difference there is, and while I'm leveling, that's not gonna be so much of a difference if I'm going to have like more 18 essence. Too little of a difference, so just gonna pick the middle one, and this is gonna be fine. Now, golems, it's a different thing. I tried playing with golems, I tried playing with all of the golems, and all of those were great. Attack speed is not necessary for you, only if you want to just to have fun. If you're very bored playing solo, just pick a golem, it's gonna be working for you. And for example, we can use iron golem, right? But we'd be using iron golem instead of blood mist. It would be, I could do that. I could actually do that, and it would be giving too much of the problem. Here you can see I'm not pressing anything. My golem could kill stuff, but for this thing to work, I would need to invest into golem abilities, and the golem points only begin here at the end, where you have increased damage by 75%, but you need to allocate 3 skill points. I don't really feel like it's worth it at the moment. I don't know why. Maybe it's I'm very strong. I don't know why. And that's basically it. For ultimate, since I'm using bone skill increase for damage. If you would be using blood, there's the overpower thing that can get you additional damage, shadow, and summons. Each and every skill I have allocated instead of those 3, like corpse tendrils, corpse explosion, reap, is optional. That allows you to make summoner builds, that allows you to make any sort of build that you wish. This build is super fun. You can go through each and every zone, you can go through quests, kill enemies, don't give a flying anything, and just have fun. Simply just go through the game. This is super easy. I'm not too sure how much of this build is actually essential when we're going to be looking to level 50 and above, but I'm going to be getting there along the lines of my experience and what kind of things I will discover. I'll be sharing it with you. So far this is looking like a very fun season to play in, and if you're still considering to join in Diablo 4 or not as a Necromancer, this is a cool build for you to try out, and this is an awesome thing. Thank you guys for watching, and see you next one.